Now, I don't know what comes to mind when you hear the word textbook center. To some, it's quite nostalgic, and to others, I'm sure it's quite stressful because it reminds you of back to school. And as a parent, that means a bit of expenditure. But this afternoon, we want to talk about the business aspect of it. And I'm joining in studio by Sachin Verma, who is Textbook Center CEO. Karibu to the studio.
Thank you very much.
All right, so first things first, I want you to help us understand a lot of things are now happening digitally in terms of reading. We're seeing a lot of books being posted online. You have the virtual copy as opposed to a physical copy. How much of an impact has that had to the business?
So thank you for having me. I think the impact it's helping us evolve. There was a recent study earlier on this year by the Writers Guild of Kenya which showed in Nairobi, for example, the reading culture is very rife. And part of why that's driven is because of the new formats that we have, for example, digital books, but also hard copies. And it's not just about books. The reading culture also is supported through articles, newspapers, magazines, etc. So we as a retailer have to adapt to ensure that we can offer all our shoppers the stuff they want to read.
So Sachin, and this is something that you've touched about, is the issue of consumer behavior changing. Over time, there's a time that libraries used to be quite a big business, but over time you're seeing a lot of this happening digitally and people just adjusting and adapting. As a business, how then, in terms of remaining profitable, how have you had to adapt?
Yeah, so on several fronts. One, what is our portfolio that we offer the shoppers, our shoppers? We've had to innovate and get new products in, new formats in to satisfy their needs. And this includes ebooks as well as a full range of books, including those from our local authors. Secondly, how we get product to them. So a lot of our shoppers are now demanding convenience. So e-commerce has also been another change within the last couple of years, where nationally anyone can order anything from us. And then lastly, affordability. In this, the constraints we have now with inflation, we still need to offer the right price point to our shoppers so that we can continue to stimulate the reading culture beyond just back to school and education for them to grow and develop.
Let's talk about revenues, and of course, like with any other business, revenues are key, and particularly within the retail sector, this is a sector that we're told cash is king. So how has your revenue and profits changed over time?
I think it's been, let's start with revenue. It's been a few tough years driven by COVID. As an institution which we rely heavily on the educational side of consumers, COVID, the 2 years was quite tough, both from a revenue decline and losses perspective. But encouragingly, we're seeing it come back in the last 12 to 18 months. And so recouping some of those losses for the business from the previous 2 years is currently where we are.
All right, so, and of course, you're currently running a number of outlets, not just one in Nairobi. And again, we've seen in some cases, we've seen businesses having to shut down some outlets, but most of yours still remain afloat. Maybe you can tell us what is the secret, if there is one?
Yeah, I think one was the commitment from the business to retain our staff, to retain our outlets throughout the period, even though it was pretty tough from a profitability point of view. I think the other point is ensuring that a lot of thought process goes into choosing when and where we open an outlet and what products we would put within that outlet so that it's tailored for the shopper's needs. We need to be very relevant for them. And that's, I think, one of the key factors to success wherever present as retail, to be very relevant to the shoppers in that vicinity. And then lastly, the service and the products that we offer should also be relevant.
All right, currently one of the big conversations is the change of curriculum in the country. In terms of business sense, has this been profitable or has this been challenging even for you as a business?
I mean, A bit a challenge, but that's just about operationally managing, you know, a whole new curriculum coming in and ensuring we have the right products at the right time for our shoppers to secure those products. I think what we see from the retail point of view is that the extensive subjects that are now offered with the new curriculum, and it will continue to evolve, the shoppers are still satisfied with the service they get from us.
All right, so again, over time, and of course, I'm sure with every book, most of them have authors. So maybe you can help us understand, how are you currently working with the different authors to have their books in your stores? And then in terms of business, how do they profit from that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so actually we are running a campaign at the moment, which is the 254 Kitabu Fest. And it's all about supporting local authors, giving them visibility and a chance to network and have a conversation with each other, to learn how to overcome some of the challenges they face when it comes to marketing their books. We stock over 1,000 authors from Kenya. This is over and above the education books, but the rate of sale is still very low. So one of the challenges that, you know, we're trying to work together with them is how to proactively market the books that they have. It's about forming the right partnerships with editors, publishers, bookshops, and then engaging with the actual audience for the books who they've written for. Yeah. So with Kitabu Fest, for example, we've had several events and will continue through to next weekend in our stores with the authors, kids book clubs, adult book events, book signings, author forums, for them to all get together and be able to discuss and talk about some of these challenges they're facing.
All right, Sachin, one of the things that we know about books, and particularly within developed market, we get to see that a book will be seen as a New York bestseller. What has been the biggest gap, particularly with our Kenyan authors, that you don't get to those levels? What is that missing link that you have seen?
I think it's the marketing. You know, from an author's point of view, very few will firstly get published. Once they are published, they'll sell it at a bookshop, and that's typically where things kind of need a lot more push in terms of marketing and engaging with their audience. Yeah. So that's the first thing. You know, we host book clubs throughout the year, and there's a lot of demand for West African authors over here. However, we still have very good local authors with great creative content that we as Textbook Center want to promote and push. And that's part of the reason for Kitabu Fest, for giving them a platform to kind of raise their voice and be seen and heard.
There's a question of technology now playing such a key role, and particularly how people are reading online. And when you look at the COVID period, there's a time that we saw even classes being taken online. So from where you sit as a business, in terms of investing in this new outlet, how much have you done? And maybe if you could take us through some of the numbers, how much have you invested in that technology space?
Yeah, so firstly, technology to provide access to our shoppers. So whether it's the tools or the equipment that they would require to be able to access this content, that's what we have shifted into, and tech now makes up about 20% of our business. In terms of the content itself, we have a couple of partnerships with ebook providers, both educational as well as general reading. That is picking up at a fairly slow pace. We noticed after COVID, the global trends, ebooks kind of slowed down and people went back to physical reading of, you know, books, magazines, and so on. Yeah. But we will continue to invest and be at the forefront to offer them, our shoppers, whatever they would require.
When you look at the Kenyan consumers, particularly because we know that educational materials are among the best sellers, so apart from that, where do you see a lot of them showing interest?
So general books, your either autobiographies, fictions, kids books. There's been a lot of encouraging interest and demand that we've seen over the few years. That's both from international, but also now, as we're saying, we're trying to support on the local side of things. I think local non-fiction is also generating quite a lot of traction. Local fiction and creative is where we would want to see a bit more growth.
All right, Sachin, as we wrap up this conversation, maybe you can take us in terms of the regulatory challenges. We're talking things to do with copyright. How are you navigating that? And maybe what needs to be done to make sure that the business is profitable, that the authors are profitable at the end of the day?
Yeah, so for one, we have to have very strong relationships with authors, distributors, and publishers. And that they are our key stakeholders. So we work very closely with them to ensure that all the regulatory requirements are met from our relationship. Number two, we have to look after and protect our shoppers. It's vital for us. So we're very strict and stringent to ensure that anything we stock is compliant and authentic to be sold within our stores. So that kind of relationship on consumers trusting us and us living up to that promise, and then working with our stakeholders further back the chain, I think those are two very critical points for us to be within the regulatory boundaries.
Sachin Verma, thank you so much for making time to be on the show today. Really appreciate your time. And thank you, our viewers, for making time to watch the entire show. We really appreciate it. So that is how we wrap up this edition of Business Today. My name is Jimmy Mbogo. Mbiu ya KTN is up next.